one of the best parts of bonsai is starting new projects and trees from inexpensive nursery material. Keep watching and I'll show you how to create something like this from something like this. And I'll give you lots of handy tips and hints along the way. Let's go. I do love the smaller bonsai trees, the Mame and the Shohin sized trees. And my inspiration for this particular video is this beautiful, crazy, twisted Japanese larch tree, which I bought from Mark at shockerbonsai.com. You can see that this tree is really crazily twisted up and knotted and has been folded over with wire to give a really compact shape. And I'm going to show you how this was done. Shocker Bonsai specialise in the smaller bonsai trees, and you can find them on Facebook as Tiny Trees, or you can find their website www.shockerbonsai.com. And there are some beautiful tiny trees at very reasonable prices. And in fact, all of the trees on the table here are project trees that I bought from shockerbonsai.com. But specifically for the purposes of today's video, we're interested in this tiny twisted Japanese larch tree. And I'm going to show you how to create something like this with some inexpensive nursery material. And I'll give you some tips and tricks along the way to help you get the best out of your bonsai. If we look closely at this tree, we can see that it's a single stemmed Japanese larch, and it starts in the soil at this point here, and the trunk comes up, winds round to this point, and in fact is doubled back on itself here, and then looped again at this point to come up. And this is the apex of the tree, where we've got a little bit of dead wood on there, and that has been done using wire to fold up an almost straight tree and to give it those crazy tight curls, which give it a very much more compact shape. Obviously, this tree is in its winter dormancy at the moment, but when it flushes out in spring, and when I bought it last year, it had lots of green foliage on it that contrasts with this gnarly wood effect on the tree. And in fact, there is a technique called cage wiring, which has been used on this tree, and you can see that is what has given us this fissured bark and gnarly look on the tree. So everything about what has happened to this tree is about giving a compact and gnarly looking tree to give us the appearance of age in the smallest possible size. Now let's see if we can replicate this. You can see as we look at the tree that the wire that has been applied to this tree to shape it is in fact still embedded in there, and that's what has given us these fissures and marks in the bark. Now on something like a Japanese maple, we don't want that because the bark is one of the prized features of the tree and it usually looks smooth. But on something like a larch or evergreen tree, we're looking for a tree that has craggy, aged-looking bark. And by leaving that wire in there and letting the bark grow around it, what we get is fissures and cracks and marks in the bark that give it that appearance of age. And that's exactly what we're aiming for with cage wiring our bonsai trees. And it doesn't do any harm to the tree, it just creates this effect on the bark. Now, in order to start a tree like this, we clearly need some nursery material. And I bought these bare-rooted Japanese larch from another company in Northern Ireland, called Beachfield Trees, who also trade under the name of Three Fat Pigs, and you can find them on eBay or on Amazon. And they sell these trees, and you can get them usually through winter into early spring as bare-rooted trees, and they sell them in batches, and they're fairly inexpensive. And I paid, I think, £28 for 10 trees. Now, I've already trimmed some of the longer roots on these trees, but what we need to do now is get them into pots and fold them up tightly with wire. So what we want to do is we want to get each of our trees, and we need to trim back some of these crazy long roots without going mad and removing too much of that root. We just need to make sure that we can get this into a pot or a pond basket. The next thing we need to do is we want to apply some wire and some shape to these trees. And if we do that before we put these into the basket, that'll probably be easier. We just need to make sure that we keep the roots hydrated while we're doing that. We don't want it to dry out. For wiring, we can use copper or aluminium wire. And in this case, this first tree, I'm going to use copper wire. And this first wire is what's going to give the tree most of its shape. So I'm wanting to start as low down as possible. We want that shape to start as close to the soil line as possible. And I'm just going to wind this around the tree. And just securing and holding the bottom there. And in fact, I'm just going to round around the roots to give me some secure hold. And now work my way up to the main trunk of the tree. And winding my way through these branches. If you're using copper wire, you will find that it's a bit tougher to work with than the aluminium wire, and it can be a little bit unforgiving, particularly when you get to the end of the wire. That can be a bit harsh on your fingers, so just be careful with that. So now I've got wire on the length of that tree, and what I want to do now is I want to really fold that up as tightly as possible, and then I'm going to get that into the pond basket. So I'm taking that and I'm twisting and folding, and I'm trying again to do that as close as I can to where the roots are, because we want that shape in the tree to start as close to the soil as possible. Now as I twist and shape the tree, I'm also trying to make those folds in the same direction as the wire, so that the wire is actually pulling tighter on the tree as I twist and turn that and make those shapes in the tree. If we were to do it the opposite way, the wire will start coming loose on the tree and lose its grip and not be as effective. And I'm trying to make these turns as tight and as exaggerated as possible. Remember, what we're trying to do is create the most compact tree in the smallest space possible. Now, clearly this design might not be to everybody's taste, and that's fair enough. We all have different aesthetics and like different things, but it gives a very interesting little tree. And so I'm going sort of backwards and forwards with these twists and bends in 3D space. We want the tree to be as interesting as possible, and make sure that we've got moves in all different axes on the tree. And coming to where the apex of my tree will be. And in fact, what I'm going to do now is take off some of the top of that tree, cutting off that top section of the tree. And then just before I plant this up into a basket, I'm going to look at where the soil line would be, which is in here, and anything that's growing down too much there, I'm just going to snip that off or shorten it. This is the shape of our tree, and what I'm also going to do now is I'm just going to go round and trim back a lot of these branches, because the current length is quite excessive for what will be a small tree. But we want to retain some of the buds and the branching on here, because that foliage that emerges is what's going to help create the tree and help it to develop and put on size. Without the buds and the foliage, there'll be no energy in the tree, and that's not what we want. And so that now is our tree. This is by no means the finished tree. We can see how this develops and what the tree gives us as it develops and grows over the coming growing seasons, and we can shape and reshape that as necessary. Now, what I'm just doing is just trying to compress some of those loops back down on the tree so that it brings it all together, and then maybe I'll just twist, create an upward growing apex. In there. And now what I want to do is I want to get that into a basket with soil as quickly as possible now, before those roots dry out too much. I'm using these inexpensive pond baskets to hold these trees and to grow them in, and the reason for that is that these baskets are, as you can see, they're aerated on the sides, they're perforated, which means that excess water in the pot will drain out, and it provides for lots of good aeration to the roots of the tree, and healthy roots mean a healthy tree, and your tree will develop quicker. So I'm just checking the size of the tree or the pot, and what I want to do is just want to put a couple of anchor wires on the side of the pot. I'm just putting a little bit of wire through either side of the pot, and you'll see once I get the trees in there, this is just to hold the tree in the centre of the pot and stop them moving about too much until those roots get fully established. These pond baskets, because of the perforations, are great for developing and growing on small trees to help them put on a bit of size. Now, next I need to get some soil into there, and we don't need to overthink this too much, just a bit of gritty soil. In here I've got a mixture of molar clay, pumice, and a little bit of general purpose compost. Because these are young trees and they're not in refinement, you don't need to worry too much about the makeup of that bonsai soil. Perhaps as the tree grows and develops, you might look at something which is more based on ecodama. So I'm just sitting the tree in the pot, and then just backfilling the soil around those roots. And just make sure that those roots are covered. Now these anchor wires I want to put around the base of the trunk, and they're just really to stop the tree from moving around too much whilst it gets settled in the pot. So I've done one from that side, and just snip off the excess, and the same from the other side. And so they're pulling from both directions just to keep that tree steady so it doesn't move too much in the pot. So here's our tree in the pot, and you can imagine as this grows and thickens up, all those trunks are going to fuse together and we're going to get crazy shapes in there with a really tightly folded up bonsai tree with a very interesting shape. And again, this might not be to everybody's taste, but you can't deny it will give a very interesting little tree. So that's the first of the trees done. The good news for you as a viewer is that I don't need 10 of these, which means that in a couple of years' time, once these have been allowed to grow and develop a little bit, I'm likely to want to give these away. I hope you found that useful or interesting, and why not give it a go and let me know in the comments how you get on. And if you'd like to see 7 years of essential bonsai knowledge and experience rolled into one video, you need to check out this video next.